So I was looking on Twitter the other day, right? I was scrolling on the lamentations of the greatest sports world and sort of just observing the effects of the virus on the general population. While I was doing so, Spencer Dinwiddie, who I'll call officially the smartest guy in the NBA, issued out a few tweets that are coming from a place where all players are restricted from basketball for the next few weeks. And if you haven't seen, by the way, they're sort of going a little crazy. It's really funny to see. Giannis is taking up chess and playing the guitar. Steph's playing cup golf. Both Ja Morant and that 76ers rookie that messed up the Chick-fil-A order made TikToks, and we've got Luka Doncic and Paul George streaming on Twitch. And to top it all off, Trae Young posting videos of shooting in laundry baskets. As we all know, clearly, the NBA is in a true predicament. At current, they're an $8 billion per year industry at the peak of its popularity, but also in the most peculiar of scenarios. As far as the modern league goes, there's never been any type of non-labor dispute disruption within a season, particularly so close to the playoffs, and with so long of a break. Again, the CDC recommended that there's no significant gatherings for at least 8 weeks, meaning that the regular season could be resuming even as late as August. Now, of course, there are major scheduling issues with this, but the issue that Spencer's little idea wants to tackle is in the competitive standpoint. I think that we can all agree that this season, the playoffs will be overshadowed by the huge event that preceded it. An asterisk may likely be put next to this year, considering that the teams are going through scenarios that have never been experienced before. I mean, in what other year would you find the league's MVP making TikToks and playing chess? By the way, also, this is the same dude that's always focused on the game, the one with the Mamba mentality and all that stuff. To see him do this stuff in what should be this season is honestly sort of weird. And I found out during this that he has a TikTok consistently. That's crazy. But anyways, speaking of weird, the NBA now has the perfect opportunity to use whatever facilities they already have in order to shake up the formats. We've already seen Adam Silver talk up a mid-season tournament and non-conference seeding, and he's already implemented with the All-Star game the Elam ending. Now that the season is essentially seen as a recovery of sorts, why not use the opportunity to try and increase fan interest? Now, this is where Spencer's idea comes in. As he so details in this thread, he proposes that the league comes back with teams getting 5 more regular season games, sort of like a tune-up to get them back into rhythm. But from there, it gets a little wild. Instead of having the traditional East-West 1-8 playoffs, there's a non-conference, all-league, free-for-all tournaments. Instead of having the 14 teams eliminated from the playoffs immediately, they get the opportunity to fight into the postseason. Since you can't have a 30-team tournament given the logistics of the brackets, Dinwiddie proposes that the bottom 4 teams, which at this point are Golden State, Minnesota, Cleveland, and Atlanta, hold a March Madness-style tournament where they have a best-of-3 series to work into the playoffs, essentially a play-in bracket. Looking at the teams involved, it would be far more entertaining than just finishing out the remaining 8 games or so of the regular season. For example, wouldn't it be amazing if we had Steph and Trae Young facing off head-to-head in a winner-take-all tournament? Or even D'Lo and Karl Anthony Towns versus Andrew Wiggins and the Warriors? Now, of course, the Cavs don't really have that much to offer, but one of those matchups would be plenty. And you never know with such life-or-death situations placed around young players. It may well be an interesting series all the way around. Now from there we enter officially into the fray, the start of the quote-unquote playoffs. Each team in the league, minus the top 4 seeds who get a first round bye, dukes it out in a best-of-5 tournament to earn the right to compete in the playoffs proper. Granted, while most of the matchups wouldn't look interesting on paper, it would definitely attract fans that otherwise wouldn't be as invested. For example, let's take the Knicks. If they got even 1 game off against whoever they would face, right now that'd probably be the Heat. Now, wouldn't that be all over the NBA world? Tell me, come on. Everybody would go crazy, particularly the Knicks lifers that haven't had good news in, 7 years. Like, just imagine Stephen A. walking into the studio after they take some sort of dub in these playoffs. I'd be watching some First Take to see some of that. Another supremely interesting matchup would be the Nets and the Pelicans, of which the Nets might have KD and or Kyrie back, and the Pels have, a tweaked up Zion Williamson. Even if Brooklyn doesn't get those 2 guys back, it still makes for Zion in the playoffs, an opportunity I don't think any party involved would want to miss. And if the Pelicans advanced, well, the way the standings are, they'd be facing the Los Angeles Lakers. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how you generate peak interest. And if KD/Kyrie are back, then you have a spectacular first round matchup straight out of the gate. A win-win scenario. The other huge benefit behind this is that the idea of conference seeding is basically eliminated. By holding this 28-team tournament, you're ranking solely by wins, meaning that the East-West issues are basically resolved. In this new format, the conference finals, which would be the quarterfinals now, could potentially host the Bucks and Clippers and also the Lakers and Raptors. Any issues of seeding barriers are solved and the playoffs would finally play like a true bracket. So let's take another look at the way that the tournament works. After the 24-team best-of-5 matchup, we proceed into what we know as the traditional playoffs. From here, it plays out as we've all been accustomed to. It's a best-of-7 4-round tournament that crowns the victor in the end as the NBA champion. This doesn't hold the illegitimate claims of a single elimination bracket, where the best teams could be knocked out due to a bad game, and it doesn't hold the monotony of a standard tournament, which would somewhat be lingering still in the shadow of the hiatus. The biggest possibility for huge amounts of fan interest is those mini play-in series. With March Madness officially cancelled, that crazy atmosphere likely wouldn't be replicated in the NBA in their traditional playoff fashion. There may be a Game 7 here or there, and if we're especially lucky, a game winner, but that's not the same as March Madness. To keep sustained excitement independent of an unlikely event, a shorter series is required. And this year is perhaps the only opportunity for this play-in to get serious traction, just given the circumstances. Not only was the season suspended, but Steph Curry just got back a few weeks prior. To get him in a March Madness-like atmosphere has incredible potential, especially considering that a wide slice of basketball fans, that being of the NCAA variety, would probably be very interested in a scenario like this. And Curry is one of the very few players that could bring interest from those types of fans. And like that, you have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands more viewers wanting to tune in. In addition, then you also have the luxury of allowing every team a chance to work their way into the playoffs. And by that I mean teams that may have not been straight all year. The aforementioned Nets with KD and Kyrie would be great, but then you have other guys like Zion again and Bradley Beal, and again Curry with possibly Klay Thompson, who now have a chance to make a run. Quite a few more storylines would likely be developed, and now the whole league's fan base, and perhaps even then some again, are involved in the postseason in ways never before seen. From estimations made by Spencer, this wouldn't add an incredible amount of time. The 5-game tune-up would take approximately 2 weeks, while the 27 to 30 seeded tournaments would last no longer than 1 week. From there, the extra round would take some 7 to 10 days before the traditional playoffs start. If anything, that's approximately 1 to 2 weeks earlier than if the league decided to begin the season from where it was, and nearly precisely the same amount of time it would take if they decided to play some 8 to 12 games before the playoffs. Well, sure, this might be a crazy idea that leads to a bunch of uninteresting matchups and wasted time, but it allows for not just fans of individual stars, but of actual teams to show some excitement in a postseason that otherwise wouldn't be doing all that. Everybody gets a part of the action without worrying about the prospects of the future. Another added bonus, by the way. Since the records are officially decided at this time, the draft odds don't mean anything at all. An environment where everybody can compete their hearts out ought to be a great show, and make some unprecedented excitement following such an unprecedented case. In other words, at the very least, it'd be crazy. And this time, not in a bad way.